Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. It is preseason time. The patch notes for patch 10.23 have been posted, which means it's time for another patch note rundown. I don't think I need to talk to you guys about how big this patch is yet again. This is going to be a long video. I am going to attempt to just cover the broad strokes of what changed, of what the new items do, that sort of thing. But if you guys want all of the details, all of the stats, you are going to need to read the patch notes for yourself. I'm so sorry, guys. There's nothing more I can do because this is an absolutely massive freaking patch. So let's go ahead and get started without any further ado. First and foremost, the item shop has been reworked. It has been cleaned up. There's a new recommended items tab that not only tells you what items you should build, but we'll also try to give you recommendations of items based on who you are up against in your games and based on what you would go best with your current build. So if you decide, for example, you want to build AD carry Annie, it will give you items that will recommend for AD carry Annie and not just any recommended items in general, which is kind of nice. And it will also recommend you things based on who you're up against. So if it says, hey, enemy team has a lot of tanks, here are some items that will be a good idea for you to build. There's also a new all items tab. This will show you all of the items. You can sort by champion class, you can sort by general stats, and there are also sidebars there for boots, consumables, and for what you have in your inventory if you're looking to sell something. Moving on to mythic items. There are a bunch of these, which I'm going to run through really quick here, as there are a lot, like I said. Gale Force is our first AD carry mythic item, which we are going to be going through first. This is for your skill shot protection or as a finisher against squishy targets. This is what you're going to want to use against team comps that consist mainly of champs like Xerath or Morgana. The Immortal Shield Bow is your survive burst item. This is good against assassins or divers. And Kraken Slayer is your anti-tank item that will allow you to burst through tanks and which will maximize your DPS. Moving on to the tank mythic items here. First up is Sunfire Aegis, which gives out a bunch of AoE damage and is best for extended fights or team fighting. The Frostfire Gauntlet, which is going to give you better stickiness and is best for keeping mobile teams close to you so your team can take advantage of that. And then the Turbo Chem Tank, which is basically just Righteous Glory. It gives you initiation and is best for getting fights started if you're not a champion that can reliably do that. The Assassin Mythics here. Duskblade of Drakthar has been upgraded to an Assassin Mythic. It is great for snowballing, best for team-fighting assassins who are going to go in for those multi-kills. Someone like Kha'Zix is going to love this item. Eclipse is your item for dueling on an assassin. It's best for an assassin that decides they want to split push and may need to deal with beefier targets like Maokai, who ordinarily they couldn't fight. Eclipse helps them level that playing field. Finally, Prowler's Claw is for your mobility. It's better for assassins who need even additional stickiness for really hard to catch targets, or assassins who don't have as much mobility as others. So Rengar, for example, can get a lot of value out of this because if you're fighting in the middle of the river, he doesn't have any bushes to jump in. This helps him close that gap and equalize on characters. Your Mage Mythics. Liandry's Anguish is going to be your anti-tank option. It's going to be best when the enemy team is feeling lots of tanky targets. Luden's Tempest is here for burst damage. It's best against squishy teams or on champions who need even more mobility. Artillery mages like Xerath and Ziggs will love this item because of the burst of movement speed it grants. And Everfrost, which is... It's best for mages who either want additional setup for their own combos, so people who already build Glogment to set up like guaranteed skill shots, they are going to like this item, or for champions who want to provide extra utility. If you're going 0-3 in lane, it might be a good idea to grab Everfrost to at least provide your team a little bit of utility. AP Bruisers have their own selection of mythic items here. First up is the Hextech Rocket Belt. This grants mobility and is best on champions who need a little bit of extra movement in order to close the gap. People like Kennen will like this item. Riftmaker grants Omnivamp. It's best on champions who are going to thrive in the middle of team fights. I can see Rumble and Mordekaiser getting a lot of value out of this. And Night Harvester is a good item for team fighting. It's great for champions who have a way in, but who do need additional stickiness to sort of thrive in fights. Again, a champ like Mordekaiser will find a lot of value out of Night Harvester. AD Bruisers have their own selection of mythic items here as well. Trinity Force is their first. It's generally streamlined for dueling and is best on fighters who want to be taking extended trades. People like Darius I can see really getting a lot of value out of this item. Gore Drinker is your survival mythic item. It's good for fighters who need to stay alive in the middle of team fights. So if you plan on team fighting a lot as a top lane AD Bruiser, this will be your item. Stride Breaker is your engagement mythic item. It's good for fighters who either need to initiate for their team because their team doesn't have an initiation of their own, or who need to try and stick to hard to catch targets. So Kallistas, Ezreals, that sort of thing. Stride Breaker is going to be your best friend. Finally, Divine Sunder is your anti-tank option. This is going to allow fighters to trade better against tanks who are building lots and lots of health. Also, as a quick aside, guys, all of these items are not class bound, which means that you can build them on any champion if you think that champion will get value out of them. So I've already seen Ezreal's going Divine Sunder in certain builds, so definitely do keep that in mind as I go through these items. Your support mythic items, starting off here with Shirelia's Battle Song. This grants teamfight mobility, is better for swift repositioning or accelerating your team into a teamfight after the engage has happened, or if you're the one who's trying to set up the engage. Locket of the Iron Solari is better for survival. This is best for weathering enemy initiations if you're playing something like a counter-engage composition. The Moonstone Renewer here is for healing. It's best on enchanters or teams that need even more sustain than they currently have. And the Imperial Mandate. This is better for ally burst. It's great on aggressive supports like Leona or Thresh because it just allows them to get even more out of their initial confrontation and their initial initiation. Moving on to stat updates here. Ability Haste is a thing. I already talked about this, so I'm not going to waste any more time on it, but suffice it to say, all these items have Ability Haste, not CDR. Vamp effects have been changed. Lifesteal is now going to count physical damage from on-hit effects, so the entirety of your auto attack, including any on-hits, that will grant you healing from your lifesteal, and Physical Vamp is now a stat, on top of Omni Vamp being sort of coded into a game as an official stat. Ryder also saying that Spell Vamp may come back. I'm scared because I remember what Vladimir was like when that was a stat, but we'll have to wait and see how that works out. Critical Strike has been slightly changed here as well. The base Critical Strike damage has been reduced to 175%, and your critical chance on legendary and mythic items has been reduced to 20%. This means that it will take a lot longer for you to hit that 100% Critical Strike chance window, but it does mean that you will be able to get there at some point, and there is going to be a lot of damage, but going for a crit-heavy build will push you more towards the later stages of the game. Talking about some of the new legendary items here, which these are brand new items. They are not functionally identical to any items that we've seen before, so I'm going to run through these real quick. The Collector here is for executing champs for a little bit of extra gold. It's going to be great on marksmen who have fallen behind and need the extra income, or on assassins who just want that extra execution potential. The Navori Quickblade here is for caster-type marksmen like Lucian or Corki, which allows you to get back a lot of cooldowns in order to continue to cast and then continue to get the auto-attack value afterwards. Force of Nature is making its return on this patch. I know, I'm very excited. This is your premier anti-mage tank item. So if the enemy team is a lot of mages, this is the go-to item to build to keep yourself alive. The Serpent's Fang here is an anti-protect the AD carry composition item for assassins, so if everyone's trying to stack shields on the AD carry, the Serpent's Fang will give you the ability to break through that and take them down. Horizon Focus is a great item for artillery mages or for mages with reliable crowd control. I can definitely see this comboing well with it's not the Glacial Augment item, but the Glacial Augment Mythic. This is going to be good with that because if you're able to get that initial crowd control, land your CC, then get all that Horizon Focus bonus damage, that could be a really potent combo. Cosmic Drive is what you want to go for if you're looking for ability haste. This gives you more cast and more movement speed, which really helps it synergize with mages that want to kite around the fight. I can definitely see even like Lilia really liking this because she doesn't really care about dealing lots of damage with each cast because she's going to let her percent HP damage do it for her, and this grants her more movement speed to run away with. Demonic Embrace is a good item on AP bruisers or battle mages who thrive in the middle of team fights. Mordekaiser is going to get a lot of value out of this item for sure. Syrilda's Grudge is an anti-tank item that is designed to allow assassins to basically assassinate anybody they want. It also is essentially an AD Rylai's, so I can even see champions like Garen finding some value with this item because they can kind of walk up and spin on you and you're slowed and there's no way out, so I do quite like this. Silvermere Dawn is the CC cleanse item for fighters or for people who aren't buying crit because Quicksilver Sash and Mercurial Scimitar by comparison are essentially now a crit focus build. This is going to be for marksman building crit. So Silvermere Dawn is an item for I'm building AD but I'm not building critical strike chance, but I still want the CC cleanse effect. That's what this item is going to be there for. The Chempunk Chainsword is your Grievous Wounds option for fighters and assassins. Meanwhile, the Chemtech Putrefier is going to be your Grievous Wounds option for supports. So every class should have access to Grievous Wounds on a completed item now. The Staff of Flowing Water is an enchanter item that is there to support mage carry. So if you are going to be running Ziggs bot or some sort of crazy combo like the Lux Sona lanes that were dominating professional play a couple months ago, this will be a great item to support those builds. Finally, these Wardstone items are essentially, there's a lot of things I could break down about them, but essentially they allow you to bank control wards and increase your stealth ward and control ward placement caps. So this is a great late game item for supports who really want that 6th slot for an item that's going to give them stats, but still need to keep their wards around. These items are what these supports are going to want to build. Moving on to some of the updated legendary items. These are the items that received significant changes. There are a lot more legendaries that only got small tweaks, so I'm not going to worry about talking about those, but I will talk about these ones as they did have some substantial changes that will affect how they are built and how they are played. Mortal Reminder now builds out of Zeal, so it's going to be better to fit into your build early if you need the Grievous Wounds, or if you're trying to deal with tanky targets that you know are snowballing. This can be a good second item to slot in right behind your Mythic. Ginsu's Rage Blade is now an item that converts your crit damage, or your critical strike chance, into on-hit damage. You can no longer crit, but you do on-hit damage on based on your critical strike. So that's going to be really interesting, and this is going to help you bridge the gap between champions who really want on-hit builds, but who also have to build some attack speed items, some Zeal items that give them critical strike that they're not really using at all. This helps bridge that gap. Phantom Dancer has returned to its old effect of giving you the ghosting and boosted movement speed as you basic attack, and attacking enough times gives you also 40% attack speed for the same duration, so you're really able to get in there, keep yourself safe, and kite backwards. Lord Dominic's Regards has been rebalanced to be better for marksmen specifically, as a lot of other champions have better ways of penetrating tank armor in particular. This is your best option for dealing with the big beef boys. Mortal Reminder is not going to be quite as good, but this does still build out of Cloak of Agility, so you will still get critical strike out of it. So again, if you need this early, you don't feel as bad about slotting it into your build. Essence Reaver is now basically your core item for your Spellslinger AD carries, champions like Lucian, Corki, or Ezreal, because it does give them the Sheen proc, which is really, really nice on those characters. And I do think that this is going to be a great item for those characters to build after their mythic item. Infinity Edge now grants you more critical strike damage per critical strike chance, but so it's going to be a better scaling item a la Death Cap is currently. The biggest problem I have with this is because the critical strike damage is lower across the board. It's not going to, you're not going to have the same 250% bursts of damage that critical strikes give you currently, but it will still allow you to really hit hard if you're able to hit that 5 item or 6 item late game build the dream. Mana Mune also grants ability haste now in order to broaden the kinds of champions that can use this beyond just the current champs that are able to already spam their abilities and get it transformed. And Muramana also now procs on abilities, so this becomes an even better item for those Spellslinger type AD carries that might have been able to stack up a tier, but then didn't get a lot of value out of it because they just weren't able to auto-attack a lot. Archangel Staff and the Seraph's Embrace no longer grant you the shield. Now they just grant large amounts of AP to make this more of a scaling damage item instead of a defensive item that also gives you a lot of damage on top of that. Lichbane has slightly higher damage on its proc, but it also has a slightly longer cooldown, so it's harder to really burst some people down with how Lichbane works. Blade of the Rune King, right, really wanted to keep the active effect because it was iconic, but they weren't really able to keep it because of how much of a mindshare active effects have. So instead, it's now essentially a passive effect. If you basic attack a champion 3 times, you get the bonus magic damage, heal up, and then steal the 25% movement speed. So that is still there. This is still going to be a great item for dealing with tanks. Ravenous Hydra lost its active ability to Gore Drinker, there it is, but it now is just a flat physical vamp item. So if you were trying to sustain up and heal yourself, especially in the middle of a wave or in the middle of a team fight, this is going to be your go-to item. The Black Cleaver has lost its movement speed and sort of its mobility niche, but now it's doubling down on the shred effect. So you do more damage to enemies that are fully shredded based on their missing health. So I know Darius is already very excited to be building this up. So it has a slightly better niche for itself now that it's not essentially a core item. Titanic Hydra is an item to bridge the sort of heavy tank builds with fighter builds because it grants you the basic attacks based on your maximum health damage. So that's going to be really good for a champion who is able to get a lot of health like Scion. This is a great item if he wants to be able to do some damage in team fights. Wit's End has swapped out its healing for movement speed in order to have a bit more of a niche, and right, wanted to bring some healing out of the picture because of all of the other items that are already doing so. Maul Malmortius is now the anti-magic burst item. This is the item to build if the enemy LeBlanc, for example, is completely going off and annihilating everybody. This hopefully will keep you alive against that, and it's especially good on fighters because the shield scales with your maximum health. Death's Dance has been essentially reworked. Now it is an anti-physical damage item that is also going to help you snowball through team fights, because if you survive long enough to get a takedown, then you essentially don't have to pay off all of that Death's Dance debt that you had based on the Ignore Pain passive. Gives you bonus movement speed, restores 10% of your health. You're able to really keep fighting after this, but this is no longer just the buy this and I never die item. It doesn't work like that anymore. Steric's Gauge, meanwhile, has been refocused for team fighting. Death's Dance is going to be better for physical burst, Maw is going to be better for magic burst, and Steric's Gauge is better for I'm being focused by the entire enemy team, and I just need generic burst protection. That's what Steric's Gauge is there for. Randuin's Omen has not really changed. It's essentially still anti-crit, anti-AD, but the active now also reduces enemy AD and crit damage, so if you're able to get on top of the enemy Tristana and pop this, she'll really be able to do no damage at all to you, and that'll help you, that'll give you a slightly better niche for this item. And Frozen Heart has been focused into the anti-attack speed item. This is what you want to build just to prevent high attack speed characters like Callista from being able to go off in team fights. Finally, Gargoyle Stoneplate here, the DR has been converted into a shield on the activation, so you're able to slightly more easily tell exactly what's happening, exactly why that guy is super tanky now. And it also has some fun interactions with things like Serpent's Embrace, which is able to sort of just penetrate that shield and kill you anyways. So that's a fun little interaction that they've got there. And most of the rest of these are staying essentially the same. I don't really feel like I need to talk through those. Like I said before, there are a lot of updates to current legendary items. These are essentially all just tweaks to the items to either make them work better with the current system or to change around their build paths or changing around what stats they grant in order to reinforce what niche they have. But generally speaking, these are all going to still work the exact same way that they do on live, so don't worry about what do they do now. It's basically the same thing. Banshee's Veil is Banshee's Veil. The jungle changes, I have talked about this a little bit, but you'll start with either the Hailblade or the Ember Knife, and that will consume itself after smiting 5 times to grant you its effects permanently. No more upgrading a jungle item, just start building your mythic right away in the game. The jungle camps have been slightly adjusted. Generally speaking, their magic resistance and health have been normalized. And the most important thing here is that Gromp restores a bunch of health, and so do Krugs, as opposed to Scuttlecrab. So junglers are kind of able to more farm through their camps and keep themselves alive by doing these camps and not have to compete for Scuttlecrab in order to try and keep themselves up. An additional Rift Scuttler spawns with a 60% max health shield, but as soon as you immobilize her, the shield breaks, again converting the damage reduction effect, which is hard to tell what's going on, into something that's more parsable by a lot of players. There are a slew of new epic items. Now, these are one tier lower than legendary items. A lot of these are going to be building into your mythics or legendary items in order to kind of sort of help bridge out builds and give you some options on what to build. Again, there are a lot of options here, so I will allow you guys to go through these. I think the biggest thing to note here is that Tiamat actually is able to proc on ranged champions, which Riot have not allowed it to do since the days where Kayle would build 5 of these and just kill you in one hit. So that's fun to see come back. So especially I can see champions like Ezreal being able to abuse that effect. Again, some of these epic items have been balanced a little bit. And moving on to the starter items here, there have been some small adjustments made. Tear of the Goddess is now a starting item. It's essentially a greedy starting item for mages who really want to opt into that scaling build. And Darkseal lost its sort of synergy with potions, so again, this is sort of a greedy, I know I'm going to do well, I know I'm going to scale well item. The Doran's items also got some very small changes to them to make them more appealing to lots of other champions. Doran's Blade now grants Omnivamp, not just Lifesteal, so mages can opt into a Doran's Blade, especially if they're sort of the Spellslinger mages that weave in auto attacks. And Doran's Ring also is back to the killing a minion to restore mana, and excess mana is converted to healing at a 50% rate. So you're able to kind of sustain up if you don't have mana. You can now build a Doran's Ring and not feel bad about it, and if you're already topped up on mana, you get a little bit of healing back from the Doran's Ring, so that's kind of nice. There have been a lot of changes here in terms of removed items. Hextech, GLP, Luden's Echo, Liandry's Torment, Protobelt, Sunfire Cape, Righteous Glory, IBG, Adaptive Helm, Athene's Unholy Grail, Frozen Mallet, Hextech Gunblade, Spellbinder, Rod of Ages, Static Shiv, and Twin Shadows are all removed. A lot of the other items on this list have essentially been reworked into mythic items, so Shurelya's Reverie is gone, but it's now Shurelya's Battle Song, so I don't feel like we needed to mention it there. So either way, all of these items are going to be removed. I'm not unhappy to see that Frozen Mallet is gone. And finally, there are some small rune tweaks here as well. Generally, this is just removing some of the healing from the game. Conquer is more about the adaptive force and less about the healing. Legend Bloodline can stack fewer times. in order to reduce the amount of total healing you're able to get. And Ravenous Hunter also grants less Omnivamp per stack, so generally speaking, you're not going to be doing as well on the healing front with these runes as you used to. Presence of Mind has also been completely reworked because its permanent stats were just solving resource issues for a lot of champions. You didn't have to worry about your resources when you're getting takedowns and just gaining the maximum mana. So instead, this is going to increase your mana regeneration when you damage an enemy champion, and energy users will also gain energy for this rune, so champions like Zed or Akali will be able to use this in addition. There are a lot of changes here for Critical Strike-based champions. Generally speaking, these changes are just to make it so that they work with the new breakpoints on Critical Strike items in the Critical Strike system, so don't worry too much if these look like buffs or nerfs. Generally speaking, it's just going to be there in order to make it so that they still function with the way the new item system works. Akali is getting buffed on this patch very slightly to compensate for Gunblade's removal. Katarina now can be built AD or AP. Essentially, she has a different set of scalings depending on which you have more of, so you're sort of able to opt into different builds. And her abilities are now able to apply on hit effects. So if you do end up going for a weird Ginsu's Rageblade type build, Katarina will be able to benefit from that on hit damage, so that's kind of fun. Kayle is going to be gaining more attack speed from her Enrage based on her AP, so Kayle can opt into more AP-heavy builds. Ornn can only refine mythic items now, but Riot are also going to be buffing him up to compensate for the fact that he no longer gets 2 refines for himself, so instead he's just going to get some of those stats for himself personally. Victor is also getting a small rework. The Hex Core is no longer in the game. I know it's a really sad day. Instead, he now harvests Hex Fragments from unit kills he receives. He gets a lot of Hex Fragments from champion takedowns, and he can spend them to upgrade a basic ability. Once all 3 basic abilities have been upgraded, he upgrades Chaos Storm automatically. So he is still able to opt into the mythic item system without having to build up his Hex Core first. A lot of these champions receive some mana adjustments to account for the fact that Sheen no longer grants mana. And then there are some small changes here, some small brand nerfs, a couple of small tweaks to Amumu and Elise, and the noted Seraphine changes that are aimed at bridging the gap between mid-Seraphine and support Seraphine. That's basically it. I know it was a long video. I tried to make it as fast as possible, so apologies if I did go through this pretty quick. Like I said, I will have the patch notes down in the comments. If you guys do end up wanting to read them on your own, I highly, highly, highly recommend you do, as there has been so much changed on this patch. I'm super excited to start theory crafting out some builds and trying them out in game, so I will definitely be seeing you guys on the Rift tomorrow to watch it all go down. Thank you all so very much for watching. For any of those who hung in with me there all the way to the end, I do really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days like today as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.